Good afternoon, everyone. It is wonderful to welcome you to the MA Curating Virtual Open Day. We will just be waiting a few minutes for participants to join, so please bear with us. I think we're at a good number. We can now begin. Good morning again, everyone, to those who didn't hear our original introductory message. My name is Sofia Gotti. I am delighted to welcome you to the MA Curating Virtual Open Day. Myself and Devika Singh are both co-leaders of the course, and we will be presenting to you the course content and everything you will need to know to prepare your applications. I'll just start with a brief introduction of myself. I am an art historian and a curator. My academic specialism is Latin American art, but I've cultivated an interest and I've taught about art across the global South and parts of Europe, always maintaining a feminist approach or thinking about decoloniality and how that informs artistic practice in its interpretation. And as a curator, I've worked in a variety of roles, and most recently, I have been in the curatorial team of the Venice Biennale, Foreigners Everywhere, Stranieri Ovunque, which has just closed its doors on Sunday. So please let me pass the mic to Devika.
Thanks, Sophia. As Sophia mentioned, I'm Devika Singh, and I'm the other co-lead of the MA in Curating. I'm a senior lecturer here at the Courtauld. In terms of my experience, I'm both an art historian and a curator, and I've both researched and curated exhibitions in places ranging from the UK, where I was a curator of international art at Tate previously, to Bangladesh and South Asia, where I curated an exhibition at the Dhaka Art Summit. I've also published on a great number of issues pertaining to global modernism and also to contemporary artists. And a recent book of mine came out on art in India from 1947, that's independence, to the 80s last year. More importantly, we're going to tell you about our MA in curating, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions on anything that crosses your mind in the Q&A box that we can use in the webinar. So please don't hesitate to do that very much as we go along. You can start as of now, and then we'll reserve special time for that at the end. Thank you. So why come to the Courtauld? We put this question at the beginning because we realized that some of you may have already made up their mind and some of you may not. So we'll starting with a more general introduction about the Courtauld. What is the Courtauld? So we have about 650 students from very much the first year of the BA to the PhD. One of our great assets is that we have 40 permanent faculty. So it's really an unparalleled breadth that we offer of art historical teaching, which is increasingly global. And this is something very much Sophia and I are participating, and also transhistorical in its outlook. Of course, the Courtauld is based in London, and that gives you the opportunity to study and have access to some of the best collections, galleries, museums, and libraries. And this really provides a very enriching setting for our MA. Our campuses, we'll show you images quickly, are both at Vernon Square, which is close to King's Cross, and Somerset House, so both incredibly central and convenient. We've been rated a world-leading place for research. This is something, of course, that we pride ourselves for, and that is important. And we also have a gallery, something we'll return to, a leading museum. Moving on, I'll pass on to you, Sophia.
So Devika mentioned the two campuses. So we have Somerset House, which is the historic site of the Courtauld. It is on the Strand. You may have been there before. It's where the Courtauld galleries are housed, and that will be sort of a place where we will return to and kind of a gravitational center for our studies. But then we also have the newer campus, Vernon Square, which is the main campus for our postgraduate programs while the Somerset House is being renovated. And I mentioned that at the Courtauld we have the wonderful Courtauld Gallery and its study rooms. And this really, if you haven't been, it is a wonderful, small scale, but extremely precious museum in the heart of London. It is world renowned in Somerset House. It has an incredible collection of Impressionist and post-Impressionist works. And it and while those are extremely well known, the collection stretches from the early Renaissance to the contemporary, really. And it also has a wonderful program of temporary exhibitions that you can explore and that really have a connection to the Institute and the research excellence that connects the two organisms together. Within the MA, we have, of course, a very close connection to the gallery as a space that is really inside the Institute that we can use to understand and see very closely the practice of curating. One of the also things I would like to mention is that the Courtauld Gallery is, of course, full of curators, but also the faculty, the Courtauld faculty, including Divika and I, are active curators. So there is curating is very much a day-to-day event at the Courtauld in its broadest sort of definition. What else goes on at the Courtauld? So in addition to the gallery's exhibitions and public programming, we have an incredible platform that is called the Research Forum. So the Research Forum is an event series, really, that runs across the 3 terms at the university, where all members of faculty are also invited to suggest, but that also independently organizes research events, symposiums, book launches, sort of lectures by internationally renowned scholars. And really, it is an unmatched resource in the spectrum of sort of history of art institutions in the UK. Another kind of asset of the Courtauld's location, in addition to kind of the way that it is organized, is that it is partnering increasingly with KCL, so with King's College London. There will be collaboration on teaching, research, and there will be specifically joint programs in the postgraduate programs that we will be sharing. So it will be an opportunity to meet and intersect with students also from other universities in London, which are very close by. So if you have not been to the Courtauld and King's College share a wall in the Somerset House campus. Yeah, and another thing to mention relating to the KCL partnership is that the Courtauld is part of University of London. So it is like a network within London that is it gives you access to a whole range of resources, which sort of exceed the Courtauld Library and its holdings, which are absolutely rich and incredible in terms of their breadth and geographical and temporal scopes, but also all the libraries of the University of London. So that is an incredible asset that we have. Next slide, thank you.
So returning to the Courtauld, as you understood, we have a number of students. So our MA sits, if you want, along and is very much also connected to other MAs in the sense that you'll get to interact with the students of the other MA. And in some cases, and we'll outline that more precisely later on, there are some seminars that are co-taught, that is taught together with the history of art MA students. So just very briefly, you can read it out for yourself, but we offer in the MA in History of Art with a range of specialisms. We call them special option modules. I think I'm rambling here the name because I'm not in charge of that MA. But that's our other great MA. Then we have the MA Art History and Conservation of Buddhist Heritage, MA Art and Business, which is also new and is taught with King's College with its business school. The L is missing there, sorry. and the MA Contemporary Art and the Moving Image, another joint venture, which is also new for the upcoming academic year, as well as the Graduate Diploma in the History of Art, which also has its own history and is also important for the Courtauld. More specifically, and that's, I guess, the reason why you're joining us today, we're going to tell you more about the MA in Curating. We've put some information online, but this is really the opportunity to hear us tell you about the MA. And as I was saying earlier, ask us questions at the end, and we've reserved a fair amount of time for that. So very briefly, our sort of top lines, just for those of you who may not know it, or as a reminder, it's a full-time 12-month program. At the moment, it's not offered on a part-time basis, and the course runs very much along 12 months. So from September to September. Our intake will be about 24 students for the next academic year, the one you're considering. That is knowing that, and we'll get back, we'll tell you a bit more in detail what the modules, of course, are about. But in terms of the number of students, it's important to know that for the elective modules, there will be opportunities to be taught in an even smaller group, so a group of about 12 students. The MA is taught both at Vernon Square, principally from that perspective at Vernon Square, but also with teaching at Somerset House. That depends on the module, but I would say is relevant for all modules. So they will, of course, be teaching involving also colleagues at the gallery at Somerset House. And this is very much complemented by study trips and visits, whether close by in London. And I was commenting on, of course, the fact that we have so many great museums, galleries, artists also living in London, but also possibly further afield. So that's very much very important to us, as you'll get to interact not just with us, but also with a range of professionals in the field who are invited basically to speak to you, tell us about their professions, their specialism, and also their hands-on experience. So what this MA does more generally is that it really offers a unique opportunity to immerse yourself in a setting that combines a groundbreaking art historical research institute, the world-class collection and the program of the gallery, and really the expertise also of the conservation department, which is contributing next year with a elective module. As I was explaining to you earlier, the Courtauld House is one of the most ambitious graduate art history program worldwide. And one thing that distinguishes it amongst others is really the vast expertise across time periods and geographical regions. And this really includes also Sophia Gotti and I, who've worked as curators and also carried out extensive research in South Asia, in Latin America, but also the UK or Italy in the case of Sophia. So building on this, the MA will provide students with an approach that is both research-led and also deeply connected, and that's crucial to us, to the debates that shape the field today, including, for example, the interpretation or constant reinterpretation of past art, historical art for contemporary audiences, and so many other critical issues. Equally important, the MA is also going to equip students with a range of very hands-on practical skills, which can range from how to interact with artists and their studios to how to write an ambitious exhibition brief or something much more detailed, like a wall label that focuses really on a single artwork. So just to give you a range of examples here. So we really want students to develop their critical understanding and for the MA overall to inspire innovative and rigorous curatorial thinking and practice. From that perspective, the program, will return to that, can be considered as an entry point for a career in museums and galleries. Of course, that sort of goes without saying and is to be expected, but also for curatorial work in a diversity of contexts ranging from heritage to the commercial art world and beyond. I'll now pass to Sophia, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the structure of the program and the individual modules that will be taught from next year. I think you're on mute, Sophia.
Yes. As Devika was saying, there are two very important pillars of the MA Curating. One is art historical research and knowledge about theory. The other is kind of practice, practice, practice. So the course is therefore structured around core modules and elective modules. And we have 2 core modules that explore the histories and theoretical debates and critical practices that shape the curatorial field today. And the core modules are connected, and they're connected by calls to decolonize, decarbonize, foster diversity and inclusion. And these are kind of the tenets of our thinking around the curatorial. So the 2 core modules are, first and foremost, the history and theory of curating, which will be taught by Devika, which takes a broad historical and global perspective on the history of display and collecting practices in the light of present theories and debate. So we will really be immersing ourselves in the current cultural debates that are addressed, in biennials, exhibitions, the news, everywhere. And the course will look at museums and their exhibition histories and think about them as sites for visual experience and artistic creation, but also as sites of protest and where you can challenge the institution, basically. The module will also address how curatorial practices have influenced the perception of art and how they have contributed to shape new histories of art. And of course, there will be an important stress on the responsibility of the curator in this process, in forging these new histories of art. The practice of curating, which I will be leading on, is sort of the flip side of the history and theory of curating, and we will be looking at sort of the curator's everyday tasks, from the conceptualization of exhibitions to their production and delivery, public programming. And what we will aim to do is to place us in real life situations where research and relations with artists will turn into curatorial projects. So we will look at, on one hand, exhibitions organized in a variety of spaces, like the artist studio, independent project spaces, the commercial gallery, and heritage sites. And then we will think about them also in relation to political and philosophical issues, and see how these political and philosophical issues affect the way we practice as curators. So alongside the core modules, we will also offer electives. So students will be able to choose from 4 electives, so 2 out of the 4. And that will allow you to consolidate your own approach to a range of specialism, to really forge your own identity as a curator. So each of these electives will run over a single semester. And they will provide sort of practical and professional experiences. They will help us work in small groups on focused topics, and also kind of throw us in the field and really connect us to a network of people within and beyond the institution. So the electives that we will offer next year are, we have Working with Collections with Dr. Devika Singh, sorry for and then, and of course, so there we will very much think about what the collections of institutions or private collections will be, what they are, how they work, and how curators, what kind of preparation curators need to work with them. The elective I will be running is Working with Artists. And there we will really think about the relationships that we can forge with artists, how these are built from nothing, how we are able to develop them, and both with living and no longer living artists, so with their estates and their archives. So that is both elements exist in this elective. And then we have Conservation for Curators, which will be run by the conservation department. So this will really give you a preparation to the basics of conservation, which really is important for anyone aspiring to be a curator and having to take on the responsibility of exhibiting artworks. And finally, we will offer Curating Historic Buildings and Heritage Sites, which will be run by Kyle Layden and Jane Spooner. And so this will also look at architecture and heritage sites really as something to be, on one hand, protected, but also reimagined and developed. So in addition to the core electives, I should mention, as you can see in this slide, we are able to offer cross-department critical debates and research skills modules, workshops that will be opportunities to intersect with art historians, so with the art history, those taking the postgraduate MA History of Art. And these will also be instrumental for your dissertation writing, which is, of course, a central part of your assessment. We will come to that. So just a note on how the course is taught. So we've gone through the course structure, so the core modules, the elective modules. But so these are predominantly classroom based. So we will, and it will be learning delivered by us, the course leaders, core-told faculty, and also invited speakers. And these will be curators and museum professionals from a variety of institutions, always, of course, of the highest possible profile. But this said, the program really insists on the development of practical skills. So these need to be exercised on the ground. So we will be visiting museums and galleries and spaces across London and the UK, conditions permitting, and we will be organizing workshop elements that are aimed at expanding professional networks, horizons, and really trying to hone in those skills that you will need the moment you step out or you graduate from this program. So hopefully this will be a very important element. And of course, and the course kind of culminates in the exhibition project. So all of these practical skills that we will be developing in across the electives and core modules will find their ultimate expression in the sort of end of year exhibition project. And this will take the form of multiple projects across sites, perhaps. It will be, of course, very connected to the research that we will be doing each year. So it will change, it will transform. But suffice it to say that we will be exercising skills in curating, but also working with archives, working with publishing, working with public programming. So these will all be elements that will dominate this sort of final year project. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. I think, okay, so here we've got the assessment. So the assessment, as you is formally assessed on portfolios that include 3,000-word essays and or other short written tasks. And these vary for each elective module, but again, a very strong practical element will be present here, including also things like virtual exhibitions or exhibition proposals. Another, of course, the exhibition project happening in May, June that I just mentioned, and the 8,000-word dissertation that is submitted in September, for which all of those workshop elements in the previous slide will be very, very important. But the wonderful thing is you will have the whole summer to work on your dissertation, so really to digest all the materials that you will be working on throughout the academic year. Finally, learning outcomes. Really, this is what we hope will really, what it means to be prepared to enter the professional world, which means you will have an advanced critical understanding of the debates that shape curating today, a curatorial expertise shaped by a wide range of leading art world professionals, and each one their own. So that is very important for us, that each candidate, each student will be able to forge their own identity and differentiate themselves from their colleagues. So a personalized individual set of research-oriented curatorial practices that kind of hones in that point, a broad-ranging view and understanding of the careers available in the curatorial field. This is very important. As I was mentioning before, there are many skills that we want to cultivate in preparing prospective curators. It's not just about selecting works and installing them in a space. It's also about producing exhibitions. It's also about publishing them. It's publishing about them. And there is a whole range of other things, whether you're working in the commercial art world, whether you're working in the nonprofit, whether you're working in development. I mean, there are many more careers available to you. Advanced skills in the research, display, care, and interpretation of artwork, as well as in the management of cultural sites and projects. Absolutely, and the attributes required to thrive in a variety of curatorial positions within the cultural sector, and an extensive professional network. I think that covers it.
Very briefly, before passing on to our colleague Alex Hawkins, what comes after the courtauld? So this is, of course, projecting yourself a little bit in the future, but a question that you may ask yourself, and that may also determine, or partly determine, the choice that you're going to make for next year. So very briefly, we mentioned some of the careers that this MA will prepare you for, but there's also, we need to acknowledge that some of the MA alumni of the courtauld have gone much beyond the professions that you could see here at the top: curators, conservators, art dealers. We have also alumni who've gone into publishing, into the media, into different aspects of business, perhaps pertaining here to art, but also journalism and much more. So we're also thinking about the very specific professional skills that you'll be taught, but also a number of transferable skills that you could bring on board to other professions, if that was something you would like to later on. To this effect, we also have a very robust career service that offers one-to-one careers appointments. So this is with a dedicated team member that helps you practice interviews. We also have online resources, help sheets made available to you, something called the Courtauld Institute Careers Program, and regular events, including also sometimes with alumni. So this is something you would basically have access to afterwards, and that continues a little while after you leave the Courtauld. That connects me or leads me to the alumni benefits, which basically gives you access to a range of events in the UK and around the world. This is after leaving the courtauld, to professional networking opportunities, or in our case, also building on the actual MA itself, exclusive online jobs board, monthly alumni e-newsletter, career support for 2 years after graduation, and more. Alex, now we hope we have excited you to get to the point in which you're keen, of course, on applying and finding out more about the technicalities and what it involves. So I'll pass on to you now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'll start on my next slide, kind of situating ourselves in the admission cycle. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that applications for 2025 entry began a couple of weeks ago. And the deadline for the MA Curating program is the 20th of January 2025. And just a quick note that you new this year, we have a kind of integrated postgraduate application form. And whilst many of you may have a very clear focus on the MA Curating program, you can, in instances, apply to up to 2 programs. A quick note or two on the kind of dates here. So whilst the kind of equal consideration deadline here of the 20th of January is the date of which we'll start to review applications after, for the purpose of your references, it can be a good idea to get those applications in a week or 2 in advance, just to give your references enough time to come through and kind of just make sure everything goes through quickly and kind of make sure the process proceeds in a kind of smooth fashion. And a sense of when you'll hear back as well. My team and the admissions team kind of look at the applications for completeness, just make sure everything has been submitted. We'll get into what those aspects are in just a moment. We then pass it on to our academic colleagues who review and make decisions through, mainly in February, in cases going into March sometimes too. And sort of, you should certainly hear back by the end of March at the very latest in most instances. If we go to my next slide. To touch upon our entry requirements. So for students who have studied in the UK, we look for a good 2-1 in their undergraduate degree. We usually assume that to be somewhere around a 65%. We do, of course, welcome applicants with other forms of academic and relevant professional experience, particularly with a program such as MA Curating, where there's this kind of vocational aspect to it. We do value and really appreciate people who may have had a few years or began a career in something that's directly relevant to what we're studying. So that can really be of benefit, and there's sort of ways you can capture that, and I'll touch upon that in the personal statement and in the application documentation that you submit. If you're studying from outside of the UK, just to quickly say that there's equivalencies, and my team are able to go through those on a case-by-case basis and just give you a bit of information of what we'd be looking for. And you can contact us at the email we'll share at the end of the slides. The personal statement is a really key part of the application form. We ask for a 300-word limit general personal statement, and that's the same for any application to the postgraduate programs. It's kind of where you outline your desire to study at the Courtauld, any relevant study projects and dissertations, work experience, etc., that might be relevant, those kind of key transferable skills coming into the program. And whilst we don't necessarily expect you to know what you want to do in a year's time or beyond, if you have a sense of that and you kind of understand where studying the MA Curating will kind of place you in your career, it's not a bad idea to kind of indicate that. It shows that you're a serious candidate and that you know kind of where your progression lies. There's also a 300-word limit preference statement, kind of program statement, and that's where you can get a bit more specific about any things that are directly relevant to the MA Curating in particular. Now, these are reasonably short statements, and you have to list every single thing you do. You'll be providing a CV that can cover the kind of granular detail of your background. But it's a good idea to pick out one or two things and demonstrate why you think they're particularly relevant to the program, and why they might show your academic skills or your professional experience in a way that we can really digest as part of our review of our application. Go to the next slide. It's the written work sample, which is another key part. We ask you to submit a written work sample between 3,000 and 5,000 words. It's not a strict or stringent kind of word count there. It's an uploaded document. And whilst often that might take the form of your an excerpt or a chapter from an undergraduate dissertation, it could also be two smaller works that may have scored particularly well in your degree that you submit as well to make up to that overall word limit. If you have been out of education for some time, or you came from a different background, you studied something that's doesn't necessarily have as much written work, maybe a fine art background in some cases, for instance, you might contemplate writing a new work, in which case we sometimes suggest writing a new piece, going to an institution, maybe comparing two works, something along those lines. And in any case, it's always useful to have a bit of context as to what you're submitting. So if it's an excerpt from a previous study, or if it's a new work, just a little line at the top that kind of places where this is, and that really helps us understand what you submitted and kind of understand what we're looking at. Of course, we ask you to provide an academic transcript, which is your final results. If you're in progress at the moment, that will be an in-progress transcript. And that will be submitted as a kind of uploaded document, or a kind of a link to an online transcript. If you've been out of education for some time, it can get a little tricky to provide those kind of full in-depth transcripts. And in those cases, we can sometimes accept a certificate of the results instead, but that can be on a case-by-case basis. And if you have any questions or worries about what you're submitting, my team are always happy to just take a look at that in advance and just say that looks like it's fine. We ask for 2 references. In many cases, and particularly the more recent your academic study will be, the more relevant having 2 academic references might be. And those will be able to give us a kind of sense of your academic writing and academic skills. If you've spent some time in kind of a professional context, and the further away from your academic kind of study you are, the more relevant professional references become. And particularly for this program, if you've spent some time in a professional context relevant to the program, a professional reference, or indeed maybe even two professional references, might become more increasingly relevant. And there's a kind of guidance that we provide the referees as to what to provide. Obviously, in a professional reference kind of instance, this is a question that we've had in some of the other sessions we've run recently. It needs to be, of course, more than just the dates that you worked somewhere. We do need a bit more information about your kind of transferable skills coming into the program. So that's just one thing to bear in mind when you're prepping your referees. They need to attest to kind of relevant skills, research skills, and things that might be particularly relevant to the program. And this quickly touching upon the other parts of the application form itself, some kind of typical things here: a scan of your passport, an ID photo that will go on to become your student ID card photo. I mentioned earlier the CV, which is really useful for us to kind of fill in the gaps that you might not be able to cover in those personal statements. And if you are coming from a country that doesn't have the English as its majority language, then you might need to provide an English language test or provide exemption for that. There's a whole host of information about the ways that you can cover that on our website, and I encourage you to look at those kind of guidance pages in great detail. Moving away from the application form and onto some other practical parts of your consideration, we have kind of scholarships and funding. So on that second point there, the programme will be eligible for a UK government master's loan. Obviously, there's kind of criteria there around citizenship or EU settled status. The UK government website covers all of those aspects in great detail and the kind of amounts you might be looking for. We have our own Courtauld MA scholarship, which the applications for which close on the 20th of January as well. The application form itself should go out in the coming weeks, and if you've begun an application already, if you've already started that process, we'll let you know via email when that's available. Some of the criteria for that are already available on that page as well. It's predominantly around kind of widened participation agenda, so we'll be looking at household income, or if you're applying from a country that is perceived to be a developing country, for instance. And that is going to be around 15,200 with a limited number of those available. We also have some accommodation available. We have our own halls of residence, Duchy House, which is situated pretty much on Waterloo Bridge, really close to the Somerset House campus. And there's a range of rooms there, from kind of more affordable shared bathroom rooms through to more spacious ensuite rooms. We also have a number of rooms available for the University of London intercollegiate halls, which are predominantly based in Bloomsbury, where you'd be sharing with students from all over institutions within London. And I say here that these are mainly for international students, but if you are in the UK and you're some distance away from London in the southeast, you might be considered as well. So if that's an option that you're looking for, don't be discouraged from applying. So that covers all the practical parts of the application, of some of the other things that you might be considering. My team's email address here is listed on the page. It's the pgadmissions@courtauld.ac.uk email address there. Some other ways of staying in touch with us are listed here too. And without further ado, I'll pass over and we'll start answering questions.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone who already submitted questions. Please keep them coming. We will be answering some of them sort of in order. So there was a question about which media will be included for the conservation for curators. So we are not running that module, but the conservation department deals with all of these media that are listed in the question. So photography, painting, sculpture. So there will be expertise available for all of these media. The job placement that was formerly offered in the MA in previous years is no longer a requirement for the MA. This was a question whether it was still in place. And while it's no longer a requirement, it's no longer a module as it was before, you will receive support. The Courtauld provides support, and we will offer our support in securing internships. Internships that will be tailored to your expertise and really kind of maybe provide very substantial training after or during the program. We have a question about what skills and qualities do you look for in an ideal candidate? Maybe Devika wants to answer that question. We were discussing it earlier.
I don't know if the ideal skills. A critical thinking, demonstrate as much as you can both your desire, how keen you are to take the course, but also what you're building on. That can be excellence in any previous achievement, whether it's an academic achievement, whether it's a professional achievement, for those who come with some professional experience already, whether short or long. So what we're looking at is really candidates who are motivated, are ready to share their enthusiasm for art, for curating, for participate also and be highly collaborative. That's something perhaps we haven't stressed upon yet, is because the profession is collaborative. This is something, a skill that you need to develop at least during the MA and be willing to develop if you don't consider that you have it already. If you have it already, that can be a plus point to mention it. So that's an aside, but something I wanted to add here. We really want motivated and highest possible candidates. And then, of course, we're going to develop all these skills together. That's what the year of the MA will be.
Absolutely. And as Devika was saying, there is no, you can come from different walks of life, and the diversity within the cohort is often something that enriches the way in which, as a group, collaboratively, we can approach curatorial issues. So we welcome different forms of preparation. Another question is about how many lectures and seminars there are per week. So we each week we will be running one of the core modules, one of the elective modules, and then not every week, but you will have alternating the research skills modules as well. And then, of course, there is the Courtauld community is very alive. So there will be the research forum event, lots of extracurricular activities that you are invited to participate in and that are actually an invaluable resource. And one thing that Devika and I always say is that we kind of have the expectation that students will participate in the art world. So we want to see them outside also of the institution. So it will be a very full-time commitment, let's put it that way. Another question that we have is whether this MA helps prepare for a future in academia.
Do you want to take that on, or do you want me to answer?
Yeah, please take it
on. Does it prepare? So part of one assessment, and something that you'll also have research skills training for, dedicated workshops, some mandatory and some that you can just sign up to. So in addition to those is the dissertation. So there's an 8,000 word dissertation, which you handed in September. From that perspective, there is a research element, which is important, and it's important not just for those who wish to pursue a career in academia, but I think for everyone, because good writing is important when you want to be a curator working in a variety of positions. But to return to the question, if you want to be an academic specializing in curating, then yes, absolutely. And even the practical elements of the course can be of great interest, because even as you want to become an academic specialized in the field, you're working in a field that has a practical component. So understanding it, being able to analyze it, becomes incredibly relevant. And because the Courtauld also has a PhD program, then the Courtauld can really be a very good setting for you to pursue this MA. Pay a particular attention, of course, to your dissertation topic within the broad range of curatorial possibilities. So a subject that can go from exhibition histories to something much more theoretical. And then consider applying to our PhD program, and from there on become an academic. So this is, of course, just one possibility, but certainly one that this MA can prepare you for if you're ready to do this. Absolutely.
And just looking at other questions, I will add that we are also, I mean, welcoming candidates with professional experience. And so thinking about, you know, their writing samples and things can be adapted to suit their actual experience, whether it has been, you know, working in a gallery or whether it has been working in a museum. So there is flexibility on what can be submitted as well as part of the application. I'm trying to group the application questions together. There are other questions about writing samples, whether they're old or new. I mean, again, there is flexibility there, whatever I think you are more comfortable with in submitting. So whatever you feel is your strongest, it doesn't matter if it's a little bit older. And there, I will leave some other questions more closely connected to admissions to Alex, and perhaps those can be more specifically answered in the chat. Is that okay? Okay, so we will focus on the broader macro ones. There's an important question about, can we talk more about the end of year project? Absolutely, we can. Divika, would you like to talk a little bit about the end?
We can both speak to it. So in May, June, which is the sort of the end of the taught aspect of our course. The course lasts for 12 months, but that's sort of when teaching typically starts closing down a little bit at the course, although we will have dissertation supervisions. There is what we call a group curatorial projects that typically opens towards May, June, and will be able to take different formats. So depending on the year, you will be divided into groups, pretty much basically transforming ourselves into a small or medium scale institutions with different groups taking on the different responsibilities that make up a curatorial project, ranging from working with our research forum and delivering an exciting and compelling program of talks, to being involved in the publication, for instance, that could accompany, whether printed or online, the curatorial project, working with the collection that is lending works, or with the living artists, if that's the case, depending on the year and the sort of brief overall concept of the exhibition. At the same time, we're always going to connect these groups. So you will always be informing each other while being responsible for specific tasks and working on elaborating and delivering these. So that's in a way something that ends in May, June, but that we begin working on many months before that, in the lead up to an opening, a materialization of that project, which could happen on our site, but also at partner venues.
Exactly. And just to add on to this answer and to connect to other questions that were being asked, one question is about the practical skills that perhaps may include working with registrars, and absolutely this in the context of the exhibition project, you will be working with registrars, and there will be an understanding of what registration work really is, and how kind of sometimes curators have to do it themselves also. And another question is about networking. Once again, the final year project, because it will be connected to curatorial teams and partner institutions, or these will be opportunities to network. And this will be an ongoing thing in art galleries when we will be visiting them, and sort of throughout the course. This is a very important element of the MA. In a way, our network is your network. So we will be working together within this grid, and hopefully you will be able to take ownership of it during the course.
There's a question that I can take if you want on how to choose the topic of the dissertation.
Yes.
So that's important, and perhaps I can compare it with, while the group curatorial project is something that will be conceived collaboratively, thought and decided collaboratively. When it comes to the dissertation and other also types of assessments throughout the year, you will be able to choose your own topic. And that's with our guidance, with our advice, of course, but this is an independent piece of work within the field of curating, very broadly conceived. And I think I gave you a few examples of what that could mean. But this is exciting because it allows you to work independently, carry on your own research, whether it's here, further afield, in a topic of your choosing. And that also, building a little bit on what Sophia was saying earlier, will help you also very much hone and be more precise in terms of your identity as a trained student in curating.
Speaking of writing, there are several questions about written samples. Again, in addition to those we answered earlier. And these really are, we look at them to understand what kind of critical thinking shines through your writing. So there isn't one specific kind of work sample that is better than another. It's just something that will be reflective of your own style of thinking and writing about art. Let's see if there is, okay. There are various other kind of very pointed questions, like whether there is still an admission interview. That is there will be interviews, of course, not all applicants will be interviewed.
There's something about limited curating experience. So while we have put an emphasis on valorizing experience, whether in curating or adjacent fields, really, it is not expected. So you can also just be coming from studying another course before, and you want to jump onto this MA, whether it's another MA or whether it's a BA. So the cohort will have a mix of students, or is expected to have a mix of students who have professional experience, perhaps a little bit, perhaps a lot, and those who don't, and who really want to develop from that perspective skills. What it means in terms of the personal statement, that was another question we had, is if I don't have experience, what do I write in my personal statement? Tell us about your motivation, tell us about the choice, the why you want to study the course. And that doesn't have to build, if you don't have it, on professional experience, of course.
There is a question about I think you answered everything regarding a personal statement. And even if you're applying to the two courses, the MA History of Art and the MA Curating, I mean, I think that of course your intention in both courses will be a little bit different, so you will have different personal statements. But we were also saying how, you know, the two disciplines cannot really do without the other. So we understand that there is a lot of overlap in why you would want to choose one or another.
Yeah, I'm trying to type answers to a lot of the specific admissions questions. I think if there's anything I'm missing, let me know. But I'm working my way through
super.
specific ones.
Thank you. And then there is a question about what kind of experience candidates will be gaining. And the question is about material culture versus transferable skills. So if I am interpreting this question correctly, I would say that there will definitely be a close contact with objects, and these will be you know, the objects in exhibitions, we will study closely and think of, you know, how will we be interpreting them. So there was sort of a very in the flesh approach to the work. And in terms of transferable skills, I don't feel like it's an either or. Both of these things will happen. So things like critical writing is a transferable skill that you will developing by really engaging with the objects that we will be looking at. So sort of project management is another skill. Working with texts and editing and publishing is another skill. So all of these things are interconnected. And I hope this kind of answers your question. And I think we answered questions about prior preparation, that we're very happy to accept people from various backgrounds. And I believe I think we've answered most of the questions more broadly. Please take this opportunity to send us more questions now if we haven't answered yours, in sort of this attempt to cluster the macro themes of the questions that we received.
Yeah, we have quite a few to go through. So as you probably saw, we were all glancing at our screen, trying also sometimes to connect the questions in order to give the best possible and most rounded answer. The webinar will be accessible later. It'll be posted on the webpage. So you can send the link to friends, colleagues who are considering the MA, and of course, watch again yourself.
Absolutely. This is a great questions. Within the MA Curating, is there a possibility to look into medieval art? Yes. I mean, this is one important thing that we cherish within this program, is the possibility to go across chronologies. So it's not necessarily just about the modern and the contemporary. It's definitely embraces all time periods and encourages an understanding of sort of the contemporary also in relation to ancient art or medieval art in this case. So, I mean, it will be important to offer the possibility for every student to really tailor the MA to their own interests.
There's a question about readings. So typically there's a pre-course reading that we recommend. So things, if you have the time, if you're able to, that you may want to read in the lead up to the MA. And then, of course, but I don't think that's what the question is about, there's plenty of reading during the MA, as I assume you would expect, but the reading could vary. And because it's an MA in curating, it can verge from academic books on the history of an institution to readings that have to do with the art press, to also the types of text that we're going to provide to you, which can be wall labels, captions, text that we're going to analyze, that we treat from that perspective differently as a secondary source. So there is lots of reading. Most importantly, I think the question pertains to pre-course reading. So I think once you're admitted, once things get rolling, we will be touching base with you again. And as part of that, there's suggested readings over the summer before you join.
We have also another question about supervisors for the dissertations. We will be your supervisors for your dissertation, but it is also, of course, you are within the courthold and you will have access to the faculty. So it is by no means a closed community.
A question about the fine arts aspect. So the course is about art curating, which doesn't mean that you cannot be informed and have a very interdisciplinary mind, think about art in the broadest possible sense. But it is focused on art curating. This is important to think about and to consider.
Absolutely. And then what are we most excited about in the creation of this new MA program? Which is a
Maybe
lovely
that's the last
question.
question then.
Yes, this is a lovely question to answer. Since it is 201, well, I would say that this, it is a wonderful opportunity to be able to conjugate history of art and curating under the same roof at this level. So it is I think I speak for both of us when I say that, as trained art historians who have practiced as curators, being able to express this conjunction at the Courtauld is the most exciting aspect in being able to launch this program.
Absolutely.
And
No, absolutely. And thank you very much for your interest in the course. Thanks for joining us today. There was a slide earlier that Alex showed with the email address PG Admissions, is this correct, at courtauld.ac.uk. Good. Thanks. Feel free, of course, to contact myself and Sophia also. Our email addresses are on the webpage of the Courtauld. This recording, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be put on the webpage. There's also information on the webpage itself in a text format. So we're trying to provide you as much information as possible. If anything is missing, as we said before, do email us. Thank you very much for joining. And we hope that you will be considering the course and wish you a very good afternoon. Thank you very much.
bye.
Bye.